Hi, you're listening to Mindset, spelled with AI, weekly or bi weekly or once upon a time tech podcast that is shaping what you know and think about AI. My name is David. I'm a tech journalist and entrepreneur. And here with me, as always, is Philip, an AI executive. Hi, Philip.
Hi, David. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'll just remind our viewers and listeners that, as always, they can go to our website, Mindset Podcast, that is Mindset with AI. .com, where they can vote for future topics that we will discuss. And today's topic was brought by you, suggested, and it kind of came out of the blue. But still, I think for me, it worked. It is how to say it, like, shortly, like working secretly with AI.
Yes.
But maybe you can expand why this topic, why now, and how we will go through the script today as you lined it up.
Yes. So I picked this topic because it's been reappearing both in my social media and in the articles and blog posts I read. And the code name would be like, uh, I'm telling ChatGPT, but I'm not telling my boss. Because what people are doing, they're using the AI kind of behind or without explicit consent. Not necessarily always against the consent, but without explicit consent of their superiors. And what I like to talk about is like, first, why? Why would you do it? Why do you have to actually use it behind the back? And there might can be some good reasons and bad reasons for that. So I like to hear your opinion on a few of those. And then I would like to explain to those who do. So we debate about, okay, what is really an issue here? Because a lot of people will probably get the basic understanding that doing something which your employer is not informed about is kind of shady area by itself already, but there are some important implications which people might be not aware of, and I like to kind of surface them for whoever is going that pathway. And then I think I like to end up with telling them where, in which areas it is really safe to use the AI, even if your boss does not know, and which might be areas where I would be a bit more cautious.
Can I give you a pushback right away?
Tell
So
me
so
anytime.
the first, like, let's move this one thing first out of the way. Like, what's the general ethics or the general rule of thumb? Because you're not informing your boss that you're using a calculator to calculate something, or you're using a formula in Excel sheet, right?
Yeah.
And AI in this regard is the same kind of tool that you're using.
So to make a joke, you really can use AI in Excel. Microsoft implemented ChatGPT into the Excel. So theoretically, you're not even using a software which is not approved to be used. So you have a kind of a point there. I think that the primary concern here is that it is creating certain disbalances, both in employee-employer relationship, which we're going to discuss in a while, but also with respect to, let's say, company and external environment. And these are the implications, or like the important points to take into consideration. The mere fact that you're using the AI without the consent, it is a little bit like you bring a better mouse or your own keyboard to your office. Like, on first view, it looks like there's nothing to object, and you might be even like, oh, whoa, you care. Contrary to the maybe these hardware examples, which I brought a few seconds back, the software extra keyboard is a bit more of an issue, and that's why we need to discuss that today.
Okay, so just to answer the question, so there's no rule of thumb as of yet, and if there was, probably it would be you should ask.
Yeah, I think you should consult. That's the kind of a best practice. You should kind of surface it and you should consult. But I think, and we're going to come to that, this is probably one of the reasons why people don't do, because they don't expect a positive reply back, and that's part of the problem. But to get
Okay.
the juice rolling, so Let me ask you, as I mean, you've been both the manager and employee yourself, so you've been in a situation, maybe not necessarily in situations where ChatGPT or AI was so prominent, but um, so if you think about yourself and your role, what would be the reasons why you would like to use AI, even if your boss does not know or does not agree?
Um, I mean, there are several. Also, I was working for the long time in media, in journalism, like a daily news operation, and in that regard, there's a lot of questions and discussions about ethics in that work and using AI. And even today, I think many newsrooms don't have AI guidelines, not even internal, and so not internal, not even external. And in that setting, if it's like an AI tool that helps you, I don't know, with grammar, with syntax, with cleaning up your audio or video or doing AI clips, that's kind of not disclosed. But and it is, I think, like everyone thinks like, oh, like everyone knows that we're using this, or it doesn't even matter. When it comes to uh, like content creation, that's suddenly a different question. So that would be like in my setting, that was the distinction. So that's why I think your setting might be a bit, a better example.
Hmm. Cool. So, in preparation for our talk, I did a bit of a research and I actually was looking for, so what are the reasons why employees are choosing or forced, or what do you put it, to use AI even without the consent or approval of the managers? And the very first reason, there's actually six major of them. So, let's go one by one. So, very first reason is quite banal, and that is that the company does not have a clear yes or no for the first place. So you are using it because it helped you, but you don't know even know if you're in legal or illegal situation because the company doesn't have a policy about it, right? So that's obviously not that much of your fault as an employee. I mean, because hey, I mean, nobody forbid me to use it, so I'm kind of using a tool which makes it so. I was shocked that based on the research from like HR executive, there is only close to half of the companies have some policy about AI usage. In majority of the companies, majority, but still majority, you are not even clear on if you can or cannot, right? And then can of course lead to, you still can ask your direct superior, but like then your direct superior opinion is a little bit arbitrary, right? Because it goes down to if he or she likes AI first place, if there is not a company rule. So it's a kind of crazy, but in most of the companies you can be using AI just because the company is not clear if you should be using AI. So that's kind of a first reason. Uh, by the way, in your media company, was there an official rule against, for using or against using the AI?
There wasn't, and as far as I know, there is not until today. There were just some guidelines published online, but again, it's still an ongoing discussion in journalism globally, like how to approach this. And just to also give you some data, last one survey from last year said that people or like readers, the audiences are skeptical if you say in general that you're using AI, but the skepticism kind of decreases once you disclose what exactly did you use AI for, and you kind of acknowledge that it wasn't creating the end product, but it was kind of like a middleman, and there was like a person on the end of the line who kind of pushed the thing out in the public and
Mm-hmm.
not the computer.
Okay, cool. Well, then imagine that your employee does have a guideline for like using AI. What would you think are the other situations where you end up still using AI without the consent of the manager? You have any
Yeah,
tip?
I think the little things, right? Like some I don't know, things where it helps me, like the same way, right? Like someone, I remember, okay, this is a good example. I remember I had the boss once before in journalism, and I was kind of doing a lot of things in Excel manually,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, and she was like, but like there are formulas for that. Like, don't waste your time with, you know, doing it manually. And I said like, but it will take me a lot of time to find the right formula. And she said, okay, but still, once you find it and use it, the next time you will like spare the time. And I thought like, hey, that's a really good like way of thinking about it. But I don't think that that applies for AI today because it's kind of still like, how would I say it, like secretive,
Mm-hmm.
or like two things, right? Like it's like the end product, it's not always the same, and at the same time like people don't trust it.
Yep. Yeah. So the second reason why employees end up being using AI against the will or behind the back of a manager is also pretty banal, and that is that the company doesn't want to pay for the AI usage fees, right? It's kind of a sad, but I mean, I can imagine that if they have not found a use case, and you would need to have like I don't know, 3 or 4 different AI tools paid, um, then it probably would be a little bit of a cost for extra for a company with no clear benefit so far. Honestly, I think this is a very stupid reason not to have an AI, because like usually it's, I don't know, 30 euros per seat per person. So and I'm quite sure that the enterprise level is even cheaper than this one. So I can't hardly think of any role where you would be not able to use AI generating more than 30 euros per month. You using it?
Do you think this is widespread? Like, do you think this reason
Yep.
is widespread?
Yeah, it is. It is actually. A Microsoft did a research about that, and they have like a research arm called WorkTrend. And in the recent study, they have found out that 78%, so 78% of the users are bringing their AI tools on their own costs to the work. So they bring their own private accounts. They don't go for company accounts. Now, you can say that maybe part of it is like, I don't want my boss to know because maybe I would not be approved. But still, even if like half of it is that you would not like your boss to know, still the other half is that my boss probably wouldn't mind, but we don't have a subscription as a company, so I have to use a private one. And this is exactly the point, like why people are not bothered to pay their own subscription. Because if you are a regular office work, so your salary is certainly in like a thousands of euros, right? Being it small or big thousand, that's not important. So 30 euro per month is like negligible. It's like, okay, 2 lunches or whatever, right? So it's not something you would think too hard. And it's interesting because back then there was a trend where companies started to recognize, okay, maybe we can't buy you a notebook that you would like to have, so you can bring your own, and we just make sure that it's secure, install some protection on it, and you can use it also for company kind of reasons. So it was called bring your own device. So now this trend is going into bring your own AI. So that's a new trend, which is stemming from like people bringing their own private accounts of ChatGPT's Claudes, I don't know, Stable Diffusions or whatever, and like using them for work in office.
I mean, I would imagine for small companies that might make sense. I can't imagine for a company even beyond 20 employees that wouldn't cause problems in the long term.
Yeah,
Okay, so third reason you have that companies do not approve of using AI, and here I have, so, and you say, okay, so it might be for legal or security reasons. Um, I have an example. I talked to some people working in the bank, for example, and there it's kind of like an issue.
it is. But also, to be honest, like I think it's a bit of a precaution, which is probably beyond necessary. um, because like the banking systems are very well insulated from the rest of the world. They are usually also running on a servers which are not running the internet and other things. So what I would be a little bit more worried is that now that we have the agentic era, that you can have an agent which can like scan the screen or take over the control of the screen. Now I think the concern gets a bit more, let's say, relevant for the companies, even for the banks where you might be working with like security. And you remember that Microsoft came with this idea, oh, we're gonna kind of take a screenshot of your screens every now and then like this would be a really bad way to be applied in banking system, I guess. Yes, maybe when the GPT started, this was a bit unwarranted concern. Now it's getting more and more serious, and still, like there's a report again from Business Insider, which is kind of covering the KPMG story on this, and they found out that about 48% of the employees are using AI tools like without being in alignment with the company. So it's pretty prominent, right? So a lot of people still do it. That brings me to the question. So, okay, we now talk about the organizational reasons. What would be the employee motivation? What do you think for using the AI? Because it has to be a proactive intent of the employee to use the AI. It's not like, oh, I had nothing to do now. I stumbled upon the ChatGPT, so I started using it. So, what would you say, from your point of view, are the employee reasons to break the rules or to be secretive about the using of AI in work setup?
Okay, an example comes to my mind, and it's like I've got work, and I'm kind of like pushing it away
Hmm.
because I know like it's unpleasant work. Then I have little time, and oh, AI can really help. Would could help me with this task. So I feed the thing into AI, and it spits out like the bare bones things that I need. For example.
Yep. So you took it like a procrastination example. So you're kind of prolonging the work until you had to do, which sounds kind of more nice to use AI. There's actually a lot of employees who are trying to make their life easier even upfront. So not like waiting until the end and then have nothing else but to need to use AI to speed up the things. So
I mean,
actually,
it's the same example. You just look at it from a
yeah,
different
that's what I
point
said.
of
You
view.
dress it a little bit nicely because like I'm under pressure, so I have to use something. So a lot of people use it intentionally, not being under pressure, but still want to do it. And this is also what we're going to discuss a little bit more. So in this regard, it is getting a little bit like the unsurfaced usage of it is getting a little bit unfair, because I guess if your manager is any good, you're getting tasks which are more or less aligned with the time that you're given to complete the task. So if it took you, for instance, a week to do before without the AI, and you don't surface to your superiors that you are using AI, and now it takes you a day with the AI, so then the question is, what did you spend the 4 days for? Which like original, and this is probably where the things get a bit more morally also questionable. But so as we probably know, all the studies report that people using AI correctly are getting much more productive, right? And actually, also the Forbes study showed that 81% of all people who are using AI report a significant productivity improvement. So everybody who does use it has a, let's say, a more leeway or more time to complete the task. And then the question is, what happens with this time saved? So that's the same thing. Um, that brings me to another reason, which is that, and that people intentionally like want to shorten their time because they are taking several jobs at the same time. And this was prominent mainly at the end of a COVID, where people are still like working remotely and the AI already came in. And I have seen real cases and real stories of people taking several jobs because they were using AI to complete the tasks, and now they could do two jobs in the same time window. And if you were not like meeting intensive, then you probably can survive like working for several employees at the same time. and a lot of people got rich about that. So that is getting downright to a not nice use case of you using AI behind the back of your boss. How
One
many jobs did
question.
you have during the COVID,
No,
David?
just the one, just the one. Uh, but other thing comes to my mind when you're mentioning video calls, and maybe we can spend one whole episode on this. But at the moment, like there are some tricks when it comes to like video calls. But what if, and we're like coming closer and closer to this to the when it becomes viable, when you could create an avatar of yourself that's really lifelike and also speaks the way you would speak, and like send that to a video call and no one can notice. We're not far, right?
Yes, would be still difficult to do. We will be still easy, relatively vulnerable to be detected, but I think we are a few months away from this would be realistic. Yes.
Okay, let's get back to our topic. So number five, you are saying employees secretly. Oh, so that was sorry.
Yes.
I'm going to cut this.
We did number five. We just remain. Yes. So we have still one more to go. So let's get the list completed. So after kind of having employees in reason number five, going with several employers, there is another spectrum of it because obviously you have to be pretty clever or at least daring to go with several jobs, but you need to know what you're doing. Now, there is the other extreme of it. So some people are using generative AI and AI to cover the gap that they don't know. So, in basics words, you are pretending to be of a higher quality of employee than you really are, and using the AI to close the gap. And you remember that we discussed this in a separate episode about hiring. Um, so I just want to give you an update because this topic is really developing fast. So based on recent observations from let's say HR recruitment companies, by the way, supported with our evidence in our company as well, we have very similar experience. 2/3 of the candidates are trying to use the AI already during the interview process, right? 2/3. So that makes you think, if 2/3 of the people already at the hiring stage kind of try to pose themselves into being something which they not really are or they not fully are, then they would have probably no restraints doing it after they've been hired. And maybe even some of those who did not use AI in the recruitment process would dare to use it. So even though this reason looks a little bit maybe kind of an obscure or edge case, it's actually becoming a very prominent reason why employees use AI to like step up their profile and to do things which they are officially not qualified for. Now, there's two sides to this coin, right? Because on one side, you can say, "Oh, great, they dared to try, even the things which they would not be able to try a few years back because they would have no way to try." So you can look at it as pretty innovative. But now, if you think about it, what share of people working on a jobs actually require innovative parts to be done, and how often they do just job they have been assigned? And I think it would be easy to assume that most of employees are just working on assignment that they had. They don't need to develop new things or find for new ways. So that means that a lot of people are actually faking the job that they should be doing first place, not trying to be innovative about skills which they never possessed. So that is pretty scary to me. And I think that especially we discussed in the other podcast that we sometimes do together, the Link podcast, we discussed this phenomenon of the vibe coding. And I think this is closely related because if you combine this kind of generating of a code and somebody who is generating code but not really knowing what he or she is doing with AI, that is downright dangerous because that is going to backfire really quick. So, did you have any other reason beyond these six in your life that you would like to use the AI for in the work setup?
Um, I didn't really find like a seventh reason to go for, like, or like use it. I think it was always somewhere in the middle, like any other. When I thought about the situation, So I think these are pretty, I would say, basic in the good sense that almost each example can fit into one of these boxes, definitely.
Mhm.
But maybe we can go through your cheat sheet, right? That you have
Yes, we
here,
can. We can.
and I would probably put it in. So we should publish this definitely somewhere.
Yes.
And you're ranking this based on the use case and the residual risk. And there are basically low, medium, and high stakes when it comes to risk using it. So, shall we take it from low to high?
Yes, that's probably the easiest way. All right. So just a bit for the listeners and viewers to explain. So what we did here, we researched the most common use cases or tasks that you can do with AI within the working setup. And we don't want to be kind of a doom scenario here. So we try to look at it from the positive side of a thing. So let's say, okay, everything has some risks, but some of the risks are well manageable. Some of them are a bit more complicated to manage. So let's say after all the precautions, which are kind of reasonable to expect, what is still the residual risk that the company has if their employees are using AI behind the back of the managers, right? And so the first use case is using a spell checking and a grammar correction tools, right? So that is almost like, hey, why would you not use it, right? So it's almost on the other side of an extreme, like, because these tools have been in some form or shape implemented in the word processors or like a Google Suite or whatever tools before. So we're kind of used to, hey, I have this underscore which tells me that this is not spelled properly or I need to kind of rephrase it. However, I think it's a bit different if it is like incorporated in the tool directly versus you use some kind of an LLM for that. And the main difference here is that the essence of the document. So if you are kind of spell checking an important legal document or whatever, the moment that you use an LLM, contrary to like I don't know a spell checker of Word or other tools, they don't remember the text. They kind of run through it and they forget. Whereas LLM run through it and remembers it, and that's probably the only risk. But still, the risk is relatively minimal because if you're clever enough not to spell check the like let's say very secretive documents in LLM, the regular documents like writing an email or whatever, nobody really cares because nobody really knows the context anyway. So I think that's the least harmful example. So number two is when you try to summarize some kind of internal memos or meeting notes. So this is very common scenario. Like you throw certain documents in it and you ask for a summary of it, or you kind of have a bot sitting to the meeting and then it's summarizing the discussion and the learning points and agreed topics. Now, I would say as for the summarizing of the documents, it's perfectly fine to use an external public document summarization because if as long as a document somewhere, like for instance you ask a research paper to be summarized for you, or you ask somebody has annual report published and you ask for this to be summarized. So these kind of documents which are public anyway, there's no harm for them to be analyzed. The only risk here would be a little bit of a hallucination, so you have to be somewhat careful about that part. But if you have a chance to or if you ask the LLM to point you to specific sections of a document which are proving that, then you can probably easily fast check. With the meeting summarizer, it's a bit more complicated because sometimes the meeting can have also sensitive data, and like whatever has been said should be stay there. So that's a bit more tricky because then the summary is officially documented and can fly around as a document. And sometimes, based on a setup that you have, the summary can be available even to whoever in organization. So that's the only concern that you need to have a little bit around. But besides that, I think it's pretty okayish. It's still a relatively low idea.
Also, let's be honest, right? Like the meeting notes transcription features are kind of pushed towards you by all of the video conferencing tools nowadays, right? So that's like
Yes.
something that's almost like right there in your face or in everybody's faces. And they're also, I think, mainly they have to meet the guidelines in the at least in the EU, right? Like if someone turns that on, everyone get a notification that this is happening, which is kind of like a second layer of protection. Where if it's not a meeting for that, you can still kind of say, "Oh, guys, we're not recording this one." Um, so I think that should be safe at the scale, not even the scale, but at the setting that it is currently, although it always can get better with the protections, but I think like pretty harmless.
Yes. By the way, you stumbled upon something which is a good indicator, not a perfect one. I would not like to make it a general rule, but as a rule of a thumb, if this is an AI use case which is provided by your software provider itself, it usually already has some precautions. For instance, these meeting summaries, they are not stored on a Google site, right? So even though they are created, Google does not keep a copies of them, right? So you have a bit of a protection from these, let's say, a banal or downright stupid misuse of the data by the AI. So as a rule of a thumb, if you have an option of doing the same thing within some tool that you have officially provided by that company, versus like going out and using a complete LLM, a naked LLM, I would go with the tools which are integrated because you have some more protection there than in wild LLM environment. That brings me to the last third one, which is in like green spectrum, small or minimal risk, and that is a drafting like a routine emails or replies. So if this is not like a high stakes lawsuit communication, or if this is not like trying to get the best customer to buy more, um, you are pretty okay within the internal environment to use AI to rephrase or draft. But the word draft here is important, right? So you can't put an equal sign between draft and send, so that's what is important indication here. So if you, as long as you can make it that one, this is still a case which is relatively banal. But this is
Have
also
you
closing the spectrum, which is safe.
have you ever gotten an email or a reply where someone forgot to delete the ChatGPT line, which was
No,
like,
that did not happen to
would
me yet.
yes,
That did not happen to me yet.
no, it did
No.
not. It happened to me a few times. I've seen it online mentioned so many times. It even happened to me once when I was like drafting for a couple of questions for someone, and I forgot to delete the line. But I hear it's pretty common, like more common than you would think.
Yep. Maybe my email communication partner was a bit more careful. Or like judging on the length of their responses, they are not using LLMs to to answer the emails.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so let's move to the medium category.
Yes. So in medium category, we have four things which are generally okay, but you need to be a bit more careful, and not necessarily careful about what you put in, but rather in double checking the output that the AI is generating for you. So the first one is kind of you trying to create or format spreadsheets. I mean, you talk about it now. AI is perfectly capable of building the formulas or structure or tables or summarizations for you. It can even do the things which you would have to code yourself in macros or whatever. So um, this is of course relatively straightforward use case and relatively safe because the AI mostly knows what it's doing, but it still can omit some important aspect, and therefore you should double check. So you should make sure that you go through the created logic and you verify if that is exactly what you would be doing. And therefore, I think this is more kind of a time saver. This is not necessarily like this is going to bring something which you would not think of, whereas this drafting the emails can be on that spectrum. Like I wouldn't write the email so nice, or I'm not a native speaker, so I would need like my English to be boosted up by the LLM. So the creating and formatting spreadsheet is more like I would probably be able to do it sooner or later, but it just takes less time with the LLM. But then I need to invest some of the save time into double checking what the LLM is producing. So that's number 4. Number 5 is translation and internal communications. So again, this is a use case we are kind of used to, because I think even before ChatGPT times, it was perfectly normal to take Google Translate, throw a paragraph which you are not sure what it means in the other language, and get a translation. Now, if you were using it for a bit more obscure languages, like Slovak, for instance, then you would know that it was not always good. Some of the pair of the languages were kind of not nice. For instance, for me, when I was translating from German to Slovak, what I did, I went from German to English and then to English to Slovak, because English to Slovak was so much better than German to Slovak. So that's a kind of a rule that you have to observe. And now you don't have to worry about that much as well, but still the LLM might not get the nuance, because it has usually, unless you prompt it well, zero context of, is this a medical text? Is this a email? Is this just a friend sending you a message? So unless you prompt it well, you still need to be careful about what is going on. And then again, as with every document, you should avoid any sensitive information being translated, because then it gets into the data sets. I guess that was also something which you probably came across pretty often.
Yeah, 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 pretty often. Okay,
Yes,
so let's move on.
yes. Number 6. So generating simple reports. So this is kind of taking the research or summary to the next point, where it also produces some kind of a document, or even like a table, or let's say analysis on a quantitative side. I would say, even though this is relatively okay-ish scenario, it's not very common. And the reason for that is that you still need to write the prompt really well in order to get what you want. So you get a lot of frustration. There were some, especially in my area, like data analytics, there were some strong statements when ChatGPT came out that, okay, we will do now analytics like headless. You only say what you want in like plain English, and it's going to build the SQL query or whatever data query you need to do. That is semi-true, to be honest. So I would say that this use case is theoretically possible and probably not that harmful, or in the middle spectrum, but not very common. Like it's not a real.
I would push back again because I am increasingly seeing this as common as I'm talking to friends, but also like random people sending me some like work materials. Uh, I can see right away when it was generated by ChatGPT,
Hmm.
because the ChatGPT style of generation simple reports is very distinct, and it uses a lot of headlines, subheadlines. It uses a lot of emojis in the reports. Um, so it's like so it's almost like overdoing the formatting, right? Like a normal report, you wouldn't spend so much time formatting and making it nice. You would just say like paragraph, paragraph, headline, paragraph, 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 headline, and this is like doing a nice structure thing. And I was like, there's no way of doing this, and at times I could kind of recreate it by like, okay, finding the prompt to create a similar report. So I would say this is more widespread than you might think.
Hmm. Interesting. All right. Well, then the last one from this pack is generating marketing materials, visuals, drafts, slogans, taglines. So I would say this is getting very, very prominent, down to the point that some marketing agencies are a little bit worried of how much beef is there still for them on a plate. But I also want to say that this is rightly on the upper spectrum of the okay side of scale, because here quite a few points arise which you need to be careful about. First of all, most of the times it is easy to misrepresent or like misposition things because it doesn't have a context. Also, if you have some kind of a brand tone or brand, let's say, style, it's difficult to prompt it unless you gave it a lot of previous examples to prompt it to go right away. And of course, then there is a copyright issue, right? So I know that, for instance, Adobe is now playing a big game in this, saying like a Firefly, you're guaranteed that you will be not sued, or and if you are, we're going to take over the litigation for you for kind of generating the images. But you know this OpenAI Gimli incident. You also have a situation where it's downright in violation of the copyrights. So it's a relatively shady area for now. It's going to get more prominent. I think the AIs will resolve it one way or another, but like the image and video and slogan and text generation for marketing reasons are going to be very, very common use case, and therefore also needs to be well managed from the employer side.
Okay,
Right.
so so that was the middle layer. Although, uh, again, maybe for some other time to discuss. I don't know if you've heard it, but there was a discussion of like some creatives from marketing agencies saying that. Um, so copyright is one thing, right? But then, like when it comes to marketing materials, you want to have something original, something
Hmm.
novel, which the AI rarely creates, depending on how you count it. But like one executive, like a creative executive, he said 95% of the marketing materials out there are average. So it's okay for AI to create it because it's like
Exactly.
still it's going to be average, which is like kind of scary in a way.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have the spectrum of like things that can we say that are like high to critical, and you
Yes.
probably would be very cautious doing it without approval.
Yep. I think what we're now going to discuss are use cases which, and interestingly, for very similar reasons, are very touchy. And you are running a high risk of getting into the trouble if you still try to use them like without the consent of the employer. And let's just go quickly through a few examples. So first of all, like using AI to summarize your data. Like let's say you need to enter a lot of comments from your customers, so you use AI to read it, and like that is downright like exposing your relatively sensitive data to external environment. Or like handling customer requests with AI. Now, if this is a generic AI that you don't have your own installation somewhere and you have like insulated it from the rest of the world, so it's not running on a local machine, and it's potentially sending it to the original databases for retraining of the LLM, that is super dangerous as well. I was surprised that the experts suggested also an external presentation creation is in this spectrum. To be honest, this was surprise to me because if I think about it, like most of the people generate presentations in a way that they download images from web anyway, and then don't care about if they are copyrighted or not. So I have seen even like images with watermarks in a presentations where people were not even kind of caring to select one without the watermark. So I was surprised this is like a troublesome issue. They say that the hallucination might be more of a problem, but then like wouldn't you not read through the presentation you're just about to deliver? So I'm not sure, but they still think that also like generating the presentation is in this high spectrum. And then of course, like handling the kind of a confidential data. What is also interesting, they don't also suggest like the internal policy interpretation. So, like, hey, I have a very complicated set of internal guidelines. So, what shall I do? Right? And they say that even this is risky. And of course, the risky it is because it exposes it to the external world what the rules are. So it makes any cyber attack much more probable or well informed for you trying to go. So that's the thing. And then the very, very top of it is the coding. And this is an interesting one because even the recent development, like this Windsurf being acquired by OpenAI, Cursor raising another round, and you see that coding becomes a very strong line of the AI use cases, where large companies dedicate the whole teams and even releases of the software for that. So it's still interesting that this is deemed to be one of the most critical use cases of viewing AI. So I just wanted to read your mind on this. So where do you stand on how dangerous or not is using AI to generate your code?
My the code, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's like pretty critical, right? Like if something goes wrong in like large software, it can um like create like real world problems. So I would say it's like really really up there. What was like in my mind when you were going through this last list was I'm waiting for the first, or maybe there were the first cases, but I'm waiting for like a really widespread example where people go to jail because they used AI and it caused like real world problems.
Hmm.
I have not heard of any such like high profile case yet, but I think it's maybe just a matter of weeks, months.
Yes. So if I can bet on this a little bit, if something like that is to happen, it's more likely to happen in, let's say, small to mid-sized company, because the reason which a large companies insulate from this happening is that they would have a QA, quality assurance team. And the QA team is the role of the QA team is to go through code and verify if it is doing what it is doing and if it's not doing anything else which it should not be doing, right? So I would say in a situation where you generate the code and you have a QA still done by human, you have relatively low risk of introducing something super complicated. Even though, I don't know if you heard of this case of Comfy UI and Disney. So a Comfy UI is a tool which helps you to configure like image and video generation, and it does a little bit like you can connect small tasks in a chain of delivery, and it is used for more sophisticated image processing or image generation because it allows you to do very specific things one at a time. And there was and of course it's built out of components which are also open source, so you can download, oh, this is a nice plugin which is, I don't know, isolating face and like swapping it for the other face, right? Now there was a Comfy UI package which was a malware which somebody from the Disney actually used for generating the AI. They plugged it in and it got a control of a complete Slack of Disney. So that was not nice, and that person got fired and is under kind of a scrutiny of legal trial. But that's kind of a situation where it's not that you're introducing a mistake by like let's say a negligent using of the AI, but somebody intentionally put a malware into the AI and able to smuggle it into your systems.
Yeah, that's a pretty, I would say, scary one.
Yep. So we went through the cases what to use and what not to use. I'd like to probably sum up our discussion with answering a question which you asked me at the very beginning, and that's like, why is this an issue? First place, right? So I think generally speaking, there are four main reasons why, if you use an AI behind your back of the boss, like the organization not knowing, you are committing some kind of a malpractice. The first one is that it's a little bit unfair for the evaluation of the employees, because it distorts the way that the employees are evaluated. Because if it's not an official policy that you can or cannot use, then some of the employees are using, some of the employees are not using, but they are still compared to each other, right? And this is this scenario, like if I silently use it, maybe even against the rules, and I do it in one day and you need to 5 days to really do it properly, then we are not fair to be compared on like a result. And if it's this is not clear that I am the AI version of it and you are not an AI version of it, it might be even downright unfair, right? So that's the kind of first case where this is not important. Secondly, I think it creates a little bit of a mismatch in value for money.
Hmm.
You've been originally hired to do something in like a human only way. Now you're not doing it in a human only way, which means that probably one unit of your time has a different price now, or like a different value. But of course, your salary was not renegotiated, right? So you are running a salary where your unit of a time is based on human only work assumption, but your actual output is not only human. And this is going to be the main problem. And this is also why the employers are going to be a bit more pushy, or let's say stingy, on using AI. Because if I was giving you work, which now we can do in 3 days, then either you tell me and I want to give you an extra work. If you don't tell me, then you're basically cheating on the price of your work, right? So that's a very strong argument, while the companies probably would not appreciate like you using the AI. The other two ones are more like a company risk, so it's not necessarily an employee risk, but of course there's a liability on you who is using it for whatever hallucination it does, because it is assumed to be your content. You are like misrepresenting an AI content to be your content. So whatever mistake you do, you're nakedly. And in retrospect, if you get into the trouble, nobody will care if you use LLM or not, if you did not say it up front, right? So if I'm your manager, you started to use AI, you didn't tell me, you create shitty content, you get into the trouble. Well, you didn't tell me, so I couldn't warn you not to do. So I mean, you take all the blame, right? So that's how that works. And interestingly enough, and that's the last point, was this. We had now and updated security training, like these visual videos and kind of a programs you go through what to do, what not to do. And it's pretty new. It was designed like last year, and it was having already a lot of AI risks in it. Like, hey, be careful about this, because if you do this, you might expose. And these are the use cases where this is also where I learned about the business case where we discussed, because it was kind of in detail explained there what the issue was. So people are probably uneducated about the risks that you're putting your company in, being it the copyright risk, being it the exposure of the data, being it's just mere fact that I can know from LLM what your employees as in a company are doing is a little bit dangerous, because that gives me, I don't know, maybe I want to take over the company. I would like to understand what they do. Or maybe I'm a competitor and I would like to understand how they do it. So even like not revealing a customer data, but just relieving your own process data is quite a risk to the company. So all in all, there's like a lot of topics where people are trying to use, or a lot of use cases where people are trying to use AI. Most of them are kind of okayish. There are some which you have to be careful about, which we mentioned in a critical spectrum, and you should be aware of the reasons that when you use this, you're actually misrepresenting yourself. You're potentially getting into the trouble, like whatever hallucination mistake is done is going to be attributed to you, and you can even bring a company into a trouble. So maybe asking still would be not too bad of an idea.
Okay, so we end up even with the age of AI still at the lifelong question that it still lies within communication. like all the problems stem from lack or not great communication, and it still comes kind of back to the communication. It's so funny to me.
I would partially agree, but I would push a little bit back. I think a lot of people don't ask because they don't want to get the answer.
Ah,
Especially in a case where you have to admit that what you were doing for a week now takes 3 hours. I'm not sure how many people are ready to proactively come to their superiors and say, you know what, now I need 20 times more work because I can do it in like 5% of our original time.
yeah, I mean that's a good point, and I'll keep it in mind because tend to look at things that like people are trying to be honest, but definitely a good point. Okay, Philip, thank you for your thoughts. That's all for this episode. As always, you can vote for the topics for our next episodes on our website, mindsetpodcast.com. That's mindset spelled with AI. And you can follow us on YouTube and watch these videos on YouTube, or you can follow us, me and Philip, on LinkedIn as well. And thank you, Philip, and bye.
Take care.
Till next time.